Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're doing the manga review. Today we're looking at Dandadan, Arc 1. This is chapters 1 through 8. I can't remember what it is in the anime, but it should be the first couple episodes, right? I think it's the first 3, something like that. Dandadan is written by Yukinobu Tatsu. The publisher is Viz Media, obviously, and I don't have physical editions for this. I read it on the app, although I do have a copy of the anime. I don't know if you can see it over there somewhere. My sister got it for my birthday. She got me the special edition, like the little box. So I do have something from Dandadan, but it's just not the physical volumes because I don't like buying normal Shonen Jump stuff. I feel like it's better to spend money on other things. Although Dandadan is probably one of my favorite ongoing, Shonen Jump books right now, so maybe I should get it. The demographic for it, of course, is shonen, since it is a Shonen Jump title. You can read it on the app, like I said. You can do it on the phone app. It doesn't have to be online on a computer, so that's good. The genres here are action, rom-com, and urban fantasy, or actually, it's really more urban sci-fi than it is fantasy. Actually, that's debatable. It's urban sci-fantasy, I guess, because it deals with both aliens and yokai, right? So the urban fantasy aspect would be like the monster hunting thing, like the yokai hunting, right? But there is like a sci-fi element to it, right? And there really isn't a urban sci-fi, kind of genre, because most of the time sci-fi that happens in cities is usually like a war scenario. There's really no like, oh, we're gonna chase down the aliens that are abducting people, right? Like I've never seen a book that deals with that, right? So urban sci-fi isn't really a thing, but I didn't know what else to call it. Adaptations wise, like I said, it does have one. It's by Shine Saru. It's really, really good. It's on Netflix. You can watch it there, but you can also buy the physical edition. It's been out for a few weeks at this point, and I recommend you guys watch it. Also, the second season is currently airing, and I have not watched it yet, but it is good. I'm sure it is, because the first season was great, right? Ratings-wise, this arc is a 5 out of 5 for me. I think it's really, really good. It's a great introduction arc. It teaches you, what the story is about. It shows you how the characters are going to be interacting going forward, and it really develops the connection between our two main characters, Momo and Okarun, right? So I think it does a great job there. So the premise of this story in general is that this young lady, Momo, I think her last name is Ayase, meets this young guy named Kenta Kakura, who she calls Okarun, and she believes in ghosts and he believes in aliens, and through fate they become friends, and then they go on little adventures throughout their city, throughout the Japanese countryside, basically, that deal with them encountering these beings, right? Both the supernatural and the sci-fi kind of characters like aliens, right? And it's basically about a boy and a girl interacting with the phenomenon, which is the title that is given in online communities to the overall idea, right? Because when it comes to the phenomenon or supernatural beings and aliens, there's a lot of theories that maybe it is the same thing, interacting with humanity, right? And so it's called the phenomenon. If you're interested in learning about that, read Passport to Magonia by Jack Valet. And so the supernatural beings and these aliens kind of go off and do silly stuff, and Momo and Okarun kind of end up doing a Scooby-Doo-esque job and are dealing with them, right? So if you're fans of Scooby-Doo, but you want something a little bit more that actually deals with aliens and supernatural beings, you would like this, I think. Although in Scooby-Doo, you have the crew from the very get-go. This story takes its time to develop the story into having a crew, right? So the plotline here opens up with Momo. She's interacting with this guy who seems to be some sort of delinquent kind of character, and apparently they were dating for a few days, and he's mad at her for not putting out, right? For not letting him go beyond first base. And she tries to beat him up because she's like, dude, how are you going to disrespect me like that? I go at my own pace and you're being a pig, right? She kicks him. Very cool action shot there. And then obviously he immediately beats her up. And, he doesn't really beat her up, but he does hit her quite a few times. Like she doesn't look like she's beat up, right? And then they break up. And later, as she's slowly kind of down on her luck walking to class, she steps in to see what's going on with this guy that she sees through the window, right? And it's this young man, kind of a nerdy, small-looking guy, and people are throwing shit at him, right? And he's reading this, alien magazine, and in a moment, when no one's paying attention, she ends up sitting with him and kind of distracting from the bullying, right? And she is standing up for him, and this kind of makes this guy kind of, curious about her, and so he ends up chasing her, and he's like, I know why you talked to me, or I know why you saved me, because she didn't actually talk to him. It's because you also care about aliens, right? And he starts spouting off a bunch of silly conspiracy theories about aliens. A lot of them are actually pretty, real. Like, people talk about them. Like, they're not necessarily real. Like, the conspiracies aren't real, but the fact that they are talked about are real, right? He talks about Project Pegasus and Bluebeam, and he talks about something about Obama talking about aliens and a bunch of other stuff like that, right? And that's all stuff that people talk about in the alien and UFO community, right? And I like listening to podcasts about it, so that's why I know about it, right? And she's like, nope, I like ghosts. I don't give a shit about aliens. They're not real. And then they both start making fun of each other because, Okarun doesn't believe that she would believe in ghosts, and she doesn't believe that he would believe in aliens, right? And so they make this kind of bet, right? We're each going to go to a place that is supposed to have these creatures, and we're going to see if we can interact with them, right? And neither of them believe that it's going to happen, but lo and behold, it does. Okarun ends up in a tunnel, walking through it. I think it's supposed to be like an old railway tunnel for their public transport, but for whatever reason, it was abandoned. And what he encounters there is the Turbo Granny, who is a yokai. She runs at 100 kilometers per hour constantly. She doesn't slow down, and she's kind of a pervert. She immediately tries to eat his dick because that's the type of series that we're looking at, right? And at the same time, Momo goes to this like abandoned warehouse or like school building or something like that, and when she's there, she encounters aliens. And these aliens look like ugly bastard characters, and they want her sexual organs because this is like a thing. When aliens abduct you, it's usually to harness something about the human body because they want to use it for reproduction purposes, right? Most of the time. And so she's going to be, assaulted by these aliens who are called the Serpians or the Serpons. I don't know how to say it, but it's based on Project Serpo, which is a conspiracy theory about how the U.S. government has a deal with aliens that allows them to occasionally take people for whatever purposes they want in exchange for technology. So that's pretty fun. I think that it's cool that it seems like Tatsu really enjoys this stuff himself because he knows a lot about it, right? And I think that's cool. I just enjoy that, right? As they're about to assault her, what happens is that her psychic powers awaken. She remembers her grandmother telling her, how her powers would work if they ever came, and they awaken. She gains this amazing psychic ability, and somehow Okarun manages to teleport himself through the phone that he was using to talk to her in order to appear. But the thing is that he appears in a guise of Turbo Granny because she's still possessing him, right? And so Ken and Momo end up fighting off these crazy Serpo aliens, right? The Serpians, or the Serp ones. And they manage to beat them up, and they finish off their first adventure. Momo ends up walking in her underwear, and so Ken decides to give her his clothes, or some of them at least, and then they properly introduce themselves to each other, right? And it turns out that Momo is Momo Ayase, and Ken Takakura is the name of a famous actor that Momo is in love with. And so when he mentions that this is his name, she kind of freaks out for a little bit. She kind of immediately realizes that this guy's kind of cute. She kind of falls in love with him in that moment. And then she immediately slaps him with a nickname, which is Okarun, or Occult Kun. And this is where he gets his nickname from, right? And so this is when they become friends. The thing is that now Okarun has been possessed by Turbo Granny, and if Momo doesn't use her psychic powers to push her down, he immediately turns into her, and this is bad for both of them, right? And so they go off to Momo's house because her grandmother turns out to be a important spirit medium, I guess is the word. And, well, she's not there because she's doing a show. And so while they're waiting for her, they end up having to fight this giant sumo wrestler alien who happens to be based on the Flatwoods Monster. Now, he doesn't really look all that similar, although the color of him is similar. It's kind of the silverish, gray tone color, and he has glowing red eyes, and the shape of his head is like the Flatwoods Monster, but the interpretation is very, very different. But it doesn't really matter. It is a Flatwoods Monster in the vaguest sense of the term, and so Momo and him have to fight him. And initially, it's very hard. They can't really deal with it, but eventually, over time, Momo figures out how to do it, and so they enact their plan, and through this, Momo ends up unconscious. And as Turbo Granny is about to also take over Momo's body, Granny Seiko shows up and she beats up Turbo Granny. And she does this in a really cool way. She carries around a baseball bat and some nails, and she uses the nails to create a barrier. Then she beats up Turbo Granny with her baseball bat, and she locks him up in a shrine. Later, Momo wakes up and is afraid that Seiko killed Okarun, and ultimately reveals that she cares about Okarun, and she apologizes to her grandmother for not believing in her, and all sorts of important character development moments to teach us about the relationship between Momo and her grandmother. And Seiko ends up kind of being like the mentor character to an extent. Like, if you ever watched Power Rangers, right, she's kind of like the Zordon character, right? And like the Tommy Oliver character in the Dino Thunder series, if you guys ever watched that, right? So Turbo Granny is taking over Okarun's body, and Okarun needs to train his body up if he ever wants to use her powers properly. And then they go through a quick training arc to help Momo control her telekinetic powers, and it turns out that they have to exercise Turbo Granny from Okarun's body, but in order to do that, they have to go to her tunnel, and then they have to challenge her to a race. And it turns out that Turbo Granny is bonded in some way with this crab kaiju that exists in the same tunnel, and so Momo and Okarun have to fight both of them, right? And they have to outrun both of them, and so they end up going through this race. It's really fun. It's really cool. I really like how it works. And then they kind of have to be smart about it. Turbo Granny doesn't slow down. She runs at the same speed all the time, right? But they have to find a way to stop her, or to at least force her to lose to them, right? And the finish line is the edge of the town boundary, and there's a speed rail, or a train that's going across it. And so Momo and Okarun latch onto the train, and then when Turbo Granny chases them, talking about the fact that she's faster than the train when it's turning, they manage to force her to stay on the train behind them so that they pass through the finish line first, right? And so they beat her. And what leads to this happening is that they can force Turbo Granny's spirit out of Okarun, and then dispel the crab and put Turbo Granny in a vessel, right, to keep her contained. And then it turns out that Seiko tells them that Turbo Granny was a vengeful spirit that was a protector of young girls that were assaulted in their life and that died from their assault. And so they go to her tunnel, they pay their respects to the yokai, since she protected young women that died from sexual violence. And then they go home and they have a crab dinner to celebrate. And Momo and Okarun are now cementing their friendship properly, and they go off, for the night before the next day of school starts, right? A really great issue here, or a really great arc here. The story is really fun. I didn't mention everything because that's not the point of this sort of video, but I mentioned all of the key points, and it was really enjoyable. When I watched the anime, I didn't expect to like it that much, but I really liked it. I thought the way that the animation was done was really great, and then reading through this, the art style is really phenomenal. The way that the story unfolds is really good. The care and importance put into the conspiracy stuff and the alien stuff is really, really good. I really love reading through this because it just feels like it's very well documented, or it's very well studied. Like the baseline from which Tatsu's getting his information is quite high, if that makes sense. Characters-wise, we have Ken Takakura, known as Okurun. We have Momo Ayase and Seiko Ayase. Momo is a gal character. Ken is kind of like a nerd character. Seiko is Momo's grandmother, but she kind of looks like she's, in her 40s or something. She's kind of like a MILF kind of character. And she's pretty fun. I like her. She has a very ridiculous kind of a vibe to her that I think actually plays very well with the rest of the characters, because she's more serious than them, but she also has a certain level of comedy to her that you kind of might associate with something like a Master Roshi type character or like a Makarov type character, right? It's serious, it's funny, but it's not necessarily at the same like shenanigan level as the main characters, and I like it. I think it's good. And we learn about Turbo Granny, and then we have Momo's friends who are called Miko and Muku, and they're pretty funny. They're also gal characters. Miko is kind of like a just like a Starbucks kind of girl, and then Muku, I think, is the one that has like the traditional like tan and super crazy like white designs on her face. That's like the traditional gal, right? Which is pretty fun. I like that. I think it's cool. In terms of world building here, we have an urban fantasy setting. We have yokai, they exist, and so do aliens. And apparently there seems to be some sort of animosity between the yokai and the aliens. They both want humans for whatever purposes that might be, but they have some level of distrust for each other, and they don't actually know how to interact with each other in some ways. And it's kind of interesting that is the case, right? And then it turns out that humans have powers that can be granted to them naturally, like in Momo's case, or through possession, like in the case of Okurun, right? There's no alien stuff that is related to our main characters as of now. Most of it seems to be supernatural based so far, right? In terms of artwork and fan service, the artwork is really, really amazing. I would say that when it comes to fan service, it's kind of tricky. On one hand, most of the situations that deal with fan service happen due to abductions or due to yokai shenanigans, right? And so the thing is that those are common issues that happen in, confessionals or based on stories told of people that say that they have been abducted or that they've had interactions with supernatural, creatures. There is a sexual component to that. And in this case, it's technically not fan service because most of the scenes are depicted in such a way as to be seen in a negative light, right? Like the Serpos are not trying to disrobe Momo because they're trying to make her look hot. They're doing it because they are going to assault her, right? And so it's bad. But then within the same set of scenes, there's a moment where Momo strikes a power pose before she does the awesome kick. And so in that case, it might seem like fan service in that moment, but it's only that moment, whereas the rest of it is supposed to be like negative, right? And so it's kind of weird. I can see a lot of people debating about this all the time ad nauseum, and it is kind of a weird kind of situation, but I think that ultimately when the fan service is done correctly, it's good, and the vast majority of the time, things that some people might consider fan service, I would say are not actually fan service at all, because they're supposed to illustrate how bad the aliens are. It's not supposed to be titillating, right? So, maybe that says more about you, that you like it more than it does about Tatsu for putting it in, right? So, yeah, that's kind of the situation there, right? Ratings for this, 5 out of 5. I think it's really, really great. I really love the series. It's been kind of a while since I read it at this point. I read it early in May, and I'm only now getting around to it, and it's just great. It's a phenomenal series. I'm very familiar with it because I watched the anime, I read the manga, and then I kind of watched some of the anime again. So that's why I'm so familiar with it. Honestly, at this point, the only thing I'm missing is a few posters and some figures from Dandadan, and I think that would be kind of really good for my room. There is a Dandadan poster right there. It's based on the it's like the Bohemian Rhapsody thing. I forgot the name of the band. It's Freddie Mercury's band. Sorry, Queen, I guess. Yeah, it's Queen. I think it's based on one of their album covers. But I got that in Mexico for like $1, which is great. Really great. But yeah, those are my thoughts here on Dandadan. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will be doing 2 more videos here, and then once the anime stops covering the 4th arc, I will do a review for that at some point in the next couple months. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think down below. What do you think about Dandadan? And thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys later.